Hi friends, I'm Dr. Ravikant, Head Department of Pharmaceutics, Dhanvantri Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Kottaguda. Today we are going to see about mucoadhesive drug delivery systems. These mucoadhesive drug delivery systems, as the name implies, they adhere to the mucus and releases the drug in a controlled fashion. They have plenty of applications, which are we going to see now. If you see, basically adhesion means it is fixing up of two surfaces together. If this adhesion, if you apply this in the context of biology, if the adhesion is taking place between polymeric drug delivery system and biological substrate, then we call it as a bioadhesion. If it is taking place between polymeric drug delivery system and uh, and mucus, then we call it as a mucoadhesion. That's the only difference. And if you see the applications, there are there are plenty of applications. I have I have given few applications over here. One thing is that we can prolong the drug release. Since we prepare these formulations using the polymer, we know that polymers form, or polymers are useful for preparation of the matrix. So the drug release will be will be controlled or prolonged due to the hindrance of polymer that it gives to the drug. And next one is when these mucoadhesive drug delivery systems are given orally, especially through buccal route, the first pass effect will be bypassed. You know that when the formulations are given orally, almost each and every formulation will faces or encounters first pass metabolism. It will be very higher for a few formulations or few drugs, and it will be lower for a few drugs. But altogether, there will be a first pass hepatic metabolism for each and every drug. If we administer this these kind of drugs which undergo extensive first pass metabolism, if we administer them as a mucoadhesive formulation, and if it is given through buccal route and or some other routes, like even we can give it as a transdermal route, like that. So when we administer in such a way, they will bypasses the hepatic first pass metabolism, so thereby bioavailability will be increased significantly. Mucoadhesive drug delivery systems, absorb rapidly, because when it is given through buccal route and some other routes, where where we are bypassing this first pass metabolism, and where if, for example, if we take a buccal route of administration, when it is given through buccal route, there are extensive blood vessels throughout this throughout this area, so that the absorption or penetration will be very abundant, very significant. That is one application that we can uh, tell. And next one, the fourth one that I am given here, targeting. If we prepare a mucoadhesive drug delivery system using certain polymers having some specific functional groups, we can target certain areas. So, so that is also one application. Uh, I am going to the details in my next classes, in my next slides. And the fifth one is increased resistance time. It is very obvious. Mucoadhesive drug delivery systems are intended for the adhesion to the mucus, so the resistance time will be increased obviously. Since it adhered to the mucus, and the release is very slow, we don't need to uh, administer the drug frequently, so that the frequency of administration significantly reduced due to the increased resistance time. Next, let us see the ideal characteristics of the mucoadhesion dosage forms. What are the ideal characteristics for each and every dosage forms? There are certain ideal characteristics. So here, let us see what are the unique uh, features that are available, so that you will understand how while preparing these formulations, the things that you have to remember. For the first one is it is telling that that should be non-toxic and non-absorbable. Obvious, you may take anything, it should be non-toxic. You may take any formulation, it should be non-toxic, and also specifically and uniquely, it should be non-absorbable with the case of mucoadhesive formulations. If we say, for example, if the polymer or if your dosage form is going inside just like that, there is no chance for the prolonged action. Okay, so it should be non-absorbable. That is one thing that you have to remember, and it should be non-irritant. It is the case with the every formulation, and it should preferably form a strong non-covalent bond. Strong non-covalent bond, I am telling. So that means that uh, covalent means it is very stronger. If it is very strong, it attaches to the mucus for longer period of time, which can cause irritation or toxicity, etc. But if it is a strong non-covalent interaction, it is not stronger than the covalent interaction. It is just a strong non-covalent. There are covalent bondings like hydrogen bonding and electrostatic interactions and hydrophobic interactions, etc. Even though they are stronger, we need not to worry because they are the reversible bonds. So they won't cause any not any toxicity or irritancy to the mucus. So this is one of the ideal characteristics, specifically, with the mucoadhesive formations. And the fourth one, it should adhere quickly. And the fifth one, it shouldn't offer any hindrance to the release. The polymer must not decompose on storage or during the shelf life. This is, the sixth one is, and the seventh one. These two are, are true with any formulation. The unique characteristics that a mucoadhesive formulation should have are that it should be non-absorbable, it should adhere quickly, and it should be having strong non-covalent interaction. It should form strong non-covalent bonds with the mucus. Okay. Next, how mucoadhesion takes place. See, this is something, which is backbone to the class. First, in order to understand how the mucoadhesion takes place, first we have to know what is the nature of the mucus and what exactly the contribution of this mucus with respect of this mucoadhesion. Then we have to see what are the polymers and their properties, and then we have to finally understand how the adhesion is taking place. First, let us see what is mucus. First thing is that mucus is coming from the goblet cells. Goblet cells are nothing but epithelial cells. They are epithelial cells that are there throughout your GIT. They are glandular in nature. You know, mm, Basically, they secrete the mucus whenever it is required. They are there in the oral cavity, in the esophagus, stomach, intestine, colon, etc. So they line everywhere, but the turnover rate or the release of this mucus varies site to site. This is very, very abundant if we take the oral cavity. Might decreases when we go to esophagus. It would be very higher when we go to the stomach. So the main function of this mucus is to act as a barrier. It acts as a barrier. You know that. Say for example, if the acid released, if mucus is not there, uh, is terrible. It can cause ulcers. So that is something you have to understand. So what is the composition of the mucus and what is specifically contributing for the mucus? That is something you have to underline. This mucus mainly contains two. components. One is mucin and another one water. Water occupies 95% of the mucus and 5% will be mucin. Mucin in turns contain glycoproteins, lipids, and proteins. This glycoprotein portion is responsible for the mucoadduction. Okay, may I come once again. This glycoprotein portion of the glycoprotein portion of the mucin is responsible for the mucoadduction. Glycoproteins means the proteins, this complete epithelium is nothing but it is a uh, they are proteins basically. The epithelial cells are proteins. At the end of at the periphery, they might be having the glyco portions. That's why we are calling it as a glycoproteins. They are very very uh, these glycoproteins released from the goblet cells. As the name implies, they're like a kind of they're proteins, and also they have high molecular weight. They have some kind of attributes that we are going to discuss, which are responsible for the mucoadduction. For example, if you see the glycoproteins, they are high molecular weight components. The molecular weight is 2 to 14, 10 power 6 gram per mole. With this high molecular weight, they behave just like a polymers. Okay, when the chain length is very higher and molecular weight is very higher, when they are very heavy, just like a polymers, and when they have to interact with another polymer, you can just see they will entangle like this. That is where the concept is. Next one is that beyond is not only the high molecular weight, they also possess some charge, which would contribute for the mucoadhesion. So, for example, this particular glycoprotein portion, they contains negative charge. If we give positive polymer, positive charge bearing polymer, uh, obviously there will be bond. Opposite charges, they attract. There will be a mucoadhesion. So charge also contributes. One thing here that we have to remember is that what exactly contributing to its charge. That is something you have to underline. Within this glycoproteins, if you see, especially on top of it, there will be a pendant sialic acids. Okay, there will be a pendant sialic acids and sulfate groups on the glycoprotein. These are anionic in nature. So obviously, when the mucin is bearing, anionic charge, entire GIT, takes the same negative charge. So this is why we see the negative charge throughout our GIT. And one more thing that is something to be pointed out at this particular context is that when this mucin is in the goblet cells, it is tightly packed. But tight packing is not possible with this negative charge because these glycoprotein portions side by side with negative charges, it is not possible because of repulsion that it encounters. That's why when they are in the goblet cells, they are with the calcium ions. These calcium ions neutralizes this negative charge and allows the tight packing of this you know glycoprotein molecules. But whenever the mucus need to be secreted into the luminal side of our GIT, then this calcium efflux takes place. When the calcium efflux takes place, when the calcium ions goes, now the sialic acid portions with the glycoproteins with the sialic acid, they are all free now, but only with the negative charge. As a result, what happens? They encounters the repulsion and they expand. they expand 400 times. They expand 400 times to its actual volume. Say, for example, if they are, if they are, in the goblet cells, uh, say the volume would be, 1 power, 1 centimeter cube, something like that. After reflex, it becomes 400 centimeter cube. So the volume, uh, the increases in a extensive fashion. Next, polymers and their properties. Now we understood, the nature of the mucus. Now we know that mucus have high molecular weight, and and also due to the high molecular weight, they behave like a polymer. And when they are like a polymer, there will be kind of chains, moving here and there. They are ready for catching, any polymer or anything, physically. There something can diffuse into that, and can be locked. Next one is that they are also bearing charge. So I say, since they are bearing negative charge, if some positive polymer comes around, some attraction will be there. So even that way, the mutation would take place. Next, polymer and their properties. Now let us understand what are polymers and what are their properties, so that we can clearly get a conclusion how is this mutation is taking place. There are three different kind of polymers. First one is the polymers that adhere, through non-specific, non-covalent interactions. So that means that non-specifically, say for example, some polymer is going like that, mucus is there, without any specificity. Simply they attach an anchor and stay there. And there would be some non-covalent interactions. That means that there would be some hydrophobic interaction, hydrophilic interactions. Something would stop them. Okay, and specifically stay there. And next one is polymers possessing hydrophilic functional groups. Some polymers would be having hydrophilic functional groups, which we are going to discuss in our very next slide. So when they are bearing hydrophilic functional groups, it is very likely situation that it forms a hydrogen bond, obviously. Okay, that is one more type of polymer that we have to look around. Third one is that polymers, especially the novel polymers, wherein recent polymers, they have certain functional groups which can recognize a certain location, only anchor there. Okay, they won't go, even though, say for example, if it is going through the stomach, it won't anchor at mucocytes of the stomach. If they are intended for intestine, they go there, they anchor there, and releases the drug accordingly. So we are going to look about those polymers at the end of this lecture. So this is all about broad classification. If you see a few examples coming under all these categories, these are a few very important polymers that are classified. The first one is that polyacrylic acid. Polyacrylic acids are nothing but there are you might be heard about carbomers. There are different grades that comes under this one. Carbomers, they form a beautiful gel, very beautiful and very transparent gel, and they comes under category of anionic polymers. And the chitosan, it is a cationic polymer, and it comes from it is natural. It is natural polymer, comes from chitin. Deacetylation, or deacylation makes the chitin into chitosan that we see in our next class. Besides to them, there are pectins and lectins and the thiolated polymers. Okay, when the polymer contains SH group, we call it as a thiolated polymer. They form a disulfide bond with the specific sites in the on the mucus, so that a mucoadhesion takes place. Now they are very advanced polymers. We see a few points about that as well in our next coming slides. So now let us see specifically. Now we understood what are their the polymers, and we know some examples. So what are there in these polymers that is contributing for the mutation to take place. So here, first first one is that functional groups contribution we have to check out. Functional groups like if one thing you have to underline, 99.9% of these mucoadhesive polymers are hydrophilic in nature. So when we tell that polymers are hydrophilic, there would be a chance for the presence of hydrophilic functional groups. Many have, many have these functional groups like COH, hydroxyl, and amide. Obviously, these are all hydrophilic in nature. They are also bearing, hydrogen atom over it. So obviously, they have the tendency to form a hydrogen bonding. So they have a tendency to form a hydrogen bonding. There was one research actually carried in order to understand whether hydrogen bonding is taking place. We know that urea is a well-known disruptor of the hydrogen bonding. If the hydrogen bonding is present, if we add the urea, that particular bond will be broken down. Say if somewhere mutation is taking place with the help of this hydrogen bonding, if urea is present, gone. Mutation will be over. So see, in order to check that, we can add urea and we can check whether hydrogen bonding is present or not. If the mucoadhesion is getting reduced before and after the addition of this urea, then we can tell that hydrogen bonding is there, in that particular area. If the mucoadhesion is not decreased, then we can tell that mucoadhesion, is not taking place because of hydrogen bonding. Okay, so that is one interesting point that you can note down. Next, concentration of active polymers. This is also very important. Sometimes the concentration is recommended to be at lowest possible. Sometimes it is recommended to be at highest concentration. When it should be at lowest, when it should be at highest. That is something we have to figure out. See, when we administer ophthalmics, most of the ophthalmics are either solutions or lightly viscous gels. So most of the times these are the solutions. When we use solutions, the concentration of the polymer should be very low. Okay, because if the concentration is very higher, especially in the ophthalmics, it is very difficult for the polymer to find the anchor site. In the eye, especially I'm telling about eye. So if the concentration is higher, the mobility decreases. Say for example, if we take say 10 ml of water, and if we add say 1 gram of carbopol, or sodium CMC, or some other polymers like polaxamers, etc. If you add 1 gram and 10 gram, there is a difference. If you add 1 gram, the mobility, or the chance for moving around will be very high when the concentration is low. If it is if the concentration has a high, the mobility decreases. So especially with the ophthalmics, the concentration should be very lower so that the mobility will be very higher. So the addition will be. And in contrast, say for example, if you are administering the formulation orally, then it is recommended the concentration of the polymer to be highest. Say for example, if you take a tablet or powder, if you get administered, which is mucoadhesive, the adhesion will be very quickest when when the solvent is very poor around this tablet. The very reason is that since the tablet is the concentration of this polymer is very higher in the case of tablets or in the powders, what happens? Obviously, there will be a capillary attractive forces and osmotic forces around these tablets. Since it is in the powder form, it has the tendency to grab the water, to catch the water. Okay, say if it is already wet, that doesn't have that much of tendency. Since it is in the dry form, when the tablet is administered, since it is in the dry form, it has a tendency to take the water. When it takes the water, say for example from the mucus, if it is taking the water, the mucus dehydrate and it gets strengthened. Okay, so the tablet, the polymer that is there in the tablet, they just go like this and grab some water, and the mucus get dehydrated because of this tendency of capillary action. So the mucus becomes strong. The anchor, the fixing will become very strong. So here I have told you two contexts. When the formulation is given through eye, the concentration is recommended to be low. The polymer concentration is recommended to be low. When it is given orally, it is recommended to be given as a tablet or powder, so that the adhesion will be very high. So we have to optimize. We have to understand where it is recommended to be high and where it is recommended to be low. Accordingly, we have to take a decision. Next, in the first case of polymer properties, we have seen about functional groups. Then we have seen about the concentration of active polymers. Now, next, we are going to see polymer molecular weight, chain length, and conformation degree of cross-linking. First, let us understand what are all these things. Polymers, basically it is unlike some other solvents or drugs, whatever it may be. Unlike some other ingredients, these polymers don't have specific molecular weight. We cannot tell that this particular polymer have this much of molecular weight. There will be a range. There will be a range. It is only possible to prepare because polymers are nothing but combination of monomers. That is why we cannot prepare a polymer with certain molecular weight, but there will be a range. That is why polymers. In the polymers, there are variety of grades. If you take a simple HPMC, hydroxypropyl methyl cellulose, there are variety and hundreds of grades. But there are very few, that we are adapted to our pharmaceutical formulation development. That is another case. So this is something you have to remember. Okay, there are different grades of polymers with one name, and the chain length varies as the molecular weight varies. And third one is the conformation. Conformation, what shape that is that the polymer is possessing, and the degree of cross-linking. Okay, so for example, if the polymer strands are like this, we can cross-link it something like this. Okay, let us see, this is the backbone of the polymer. These are the strands coming out of it. We can cross-link this polymer chains. As we cross-link, some attributes changes. That is something we are going to see now. Okay, that is about cross-linking. So first, let us see what is the contribution of the molecular weight. In many cases, the mucoadhesion increases as the molecular weight increases up to 1 lakh gram per mole. This is rule of thumb. There are some exceptions to this rule. For example, if we take polyacrylic acid, the optimum molecular weight is 7,50,000 as it is given here, gram per mole, and here it is 40 lakhs for the polyethylene oxide. So gram per mole. That is something you have to write here. So gram per mole are the units for molecular weight. So this is about molecular weight. Conformation, the shape. This is something interesting. For example, if you see the Dextran, which is polymer, the Dextran 20 lakhs and Dextran 2 lakhs See here, it is nearly 20 lakhs, and the 2 lakhs and 20 lakhs gram per mole molecular weight dextrans possess similar mutation. That means that almost similar. Why? Why is it so? Say, for example, as per the rule of thumb, if the molecular weight increases, the mutation supposed supposedly increase. But if it is not the case with everything, right? So in the case of Dextran, if you see the 20 lakhs and 2 lakhs, both both grades, they possess similar bioaddition or muaddition. Why is it so? Means dextrans are helical in conformation, helical, and the groups that are responsible, the hydrophilic functional groups, especially, these groups are shielded with this helical conformation. Say, for example, if it is something like this, the functional groups will be inside. Okay, they don't expose to this external environment. They are there inside. So obviously, they cannot form a bond with the mucus because of unavailability. Okay, that is why even though you increase, molecular weight, there will be, so see, if I am telling that I am increasing the molecular weight, obviously there will be a increase in the chain length. That means that, with the chain length of, say, let us assume that if the chain length of 1 millimeter and 2 millimeters, there will be a difference in the number of functional groups present. In, say, for example, with a 1 millimeter chain length, there would be, I'm just giving one example to you. Millimeter, it won't be in millimeters. Say, for example, in 1 millimeter, there would be 100 functional groups. With the 2 millimeters, 200 functional groups would be present. Even though there will be no increase in the mutation because of this shielding nature, because of this helical conformation. Okay, so conformation is also responsible. Say, for example, if it is in a linear form, mutation would be proportional. This 20 lakhs would be having at least higher mucoadhesion strength when compared with the 2 lakhs gram per mole dextran grade. That is about this conformation. And cross-link density. Cross-link density, to what extent you are cross-linked? Say, for example, if two strands are like this, you can cross-link 2 times. You may cross-link it, 5 to 10 times. The same one you can cross-link, 5 to 6 times. To what density, to what extent you are cross-linked is very important, because, if you are not at all cross-linked, if the polymer strands are like this, they have the chance for moving in and around. They can easily move here and there like this. But if you cross-link like this, they don't have the freedom to move around. If they don't have the freedom to move around, say, for example, if they go to the mucus, even though they go to the mucus, they don't have much chance to, physically entangle. Okay, let us forget about chemical entanglement like hydrogen bonding, or hydrostatic interaction, or some other interactions. I'm just telling physically, when they are going like this, sometimes physical entanglement is possible. No need to present always this chemical bondings. So due to this cross-link, this freedom of movement decreases, but it is recommended to cross-link to some extent, because cross-linking is helpful for preparation of the gel kind of structures. The swell, when you cross-link, the swelling of this polymer, very significant. When they swell, the effective surface area increases, and they can easily catch the mucus. But if they are very highly cross-linked, there will be zero chance for the entanglement. So the cross-linking density is important. To certain extent, we have to cross-link. That means that there are the cross-linking agents. Depending upon the concentration that you are adding into your polymer solution, the extent of cross-linking will be. So if you take the less concentration of this cross-linking agent, the cross-linking will be accordingly happens. If you take higher concentration, they will be heavily cross-linked. That is why, while doing the experiments, we have to make a judgment whether to use higher concentration or lower concentration, which concentration is optimum. to maintain the bioadhesion. This and all, you have to figure out while you are developing a formulation. Next one, very interesting and very important one, is pH. pH is very important in the biological context, because you see, if we, and also it is, it is also works as a sensor. If the formulation is given orally, the pH varies location to location. The pH of saliva would be around 6.8. When it is going down, decreases, it will be around 1.5 to something, somewhere around 1.2, something like that in the stomach. If we go to the intestine, the pH increases to 6.8, up to 6.8, something like that. So you have this, since the pH is different at different locations, it works as a trigger for some formulations. Some formulations would be very active at a pH 1.5. Sometimes it would be very active at 6.8. So that this pH difference is a good chance for the formulation development scientists to prepare a targeted formulations. So coming to this particular slide, say for example, if the pKa is higher than the pH of the local environment is higher than the pKa of a polymer, the functional groups will be ionized. Okay, if you go to the fundamentals, it is very clear for everybody. I don't want to go inside because it distract the class. But one fundamental thing that I wanted to rebrush is that if the pH of the local environment is higher than the pKa of the functional group on the polymer, then that particular functional group get ionized. Say for example, the COH functional groups on the carbomer polymer have the pKa of 4.5, 4 to 5. When we maintain the pH around 4 to 5, the mucoadhesion strength will be very higher. When you maintain the neutral pH around 7, you see the mucoadhesion strength of this particular carbomer decreases. Carbomers are nothing but polyacrylic acid polymers, that we have discussed in our previous slides. This is very abundantly used polymer. I'm telling you once again, they have since they are a hydrophilic functional, hydrophilic polymers, they have the functional groups like COH and NH2, etc. These COH functional groups are responsible for the hydrogen bonding and for the mucoadhesion strength. They have the pK of 4 to 5. When we maintain the pH around this 4 to 5, these COH functional groups don't get ionized. That means that COH will be COH at this particular pH. Say for example, if you maintain the neutral pH, say 7, this COH get ionized. That means that COH becomes COO minus. Okay, then this has to only attach with the electrostatic, with the electrostatic interactions. But this particular polymer binds the mucin with the hydrogen bonding. In order to do that, we have to maintain, the pH should be around 4 to 5. When the pH is 4 to 5, that is equal to the pH of, pK of the COH functional group. They won't get ionized. That means that the COH will be as a COH, so that the hydrogen bond, the hydrogen atom contributes for the hydrogen bonding. So here I have clearly mentioned that point. A systematic investigation of the mechanism of mucoadhesion clearly showed that the protonated carboxyl groups rather than ionized carboxyl groups react with mucin molecules, presumably by simultaneous formation of numerous hydrogen bonds. So that is about it. Drug excipient concentration. And drug excipient concentration is sometimes not, it's a very unlikely situation, sometimes contribute. Here we are given one example. propranolol hydrochloride to carbopol. See, if you prepare a bioadhesive gel with this, you know, when water was limited in the system, mucus adhesion is very high. When it is diluted, mucus adhesion became very weak. The reason uh, is that there will be interaction between propranolol hydrochloride and carbopol. They form a complex. This complex is elastic in nature. This complex formation, only possible when the concentration is very higher. When the concentration is very higher, the chance for this propranolol hydrochloride and carbopol to come together will be very high. Say, for example, in the diluted environment, they move around, they move apart like this. But when the concentration is very higher, obviously they come closer and form a complex. This particular complex is elastic in nature, so that obviously as the elasticity increases, the mucus adhesion also increases due to due to more physical entanglement. Uh, and the next, in the case if it is diluted, they move apart. Obviously, the complex formation, the chances for the complex formation decreases, so that the mucus adhesion also. That is about drug excipient interaction. In the next class, we discuss about theories of mucus adhesion. Thank you, friends. Please, follow this class very carefully. We will discuss more about this mucus adhesion in my next class. So, see you in my next class. Take care. Bye.